Okay, it's 8 o'clock. Let's call the finance committee meeting to order. John Masters has to be excused. And I'm not very much we have a 8 o'clock. Let's call the finance committee meeting to order. We're there to get a motion to John Masters has to be excused. Jeff, second by Virginia, to adopt the agenda and approve the minutes. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Public comment on the public here. Comment. Seeing none, we'll move on to the monthly administrative reports, following on the financials.
I don't have a whole lot this time. Sales tax. Collected for this last month, 104,438. Down a little bit from the previous year for that single month, but that happens. If we look at the last 3 to 6, it's still a slight increase over the previous year. Year to date, that would be 218,779. Whereas last year at this time it was 216,659. Contingency for the next 5 minutes or so. There's no requests, but there will be down the agenda a little bit. And then as far as individual departments, so this is first quarter of the year is done. If we look at the benchmark, which is a real rough benchmark, there are 3, 6, 7, 9 departments that look like they may be going over. 7 of those, 7.5 maybe, are standard things where they pay a big payment up front, or it's a seasonal item. It's items that are very routine and expected. It just doesn't reflect well in that benchmark. The 2 that aren't are the 1.5 that. The quarter is slightly above that, and we'll watch them because that department kind of has to react. There was a couple of years ago where it was over and then it came back down. That may or may not be an issue. And then land information was a little bit of each. 2 of them were early payments for maintenance or agreements, and then the GIS
consultant.
That's a little higher. Number 1, it's only the second year of it. Number 2, it's probably because the IT position is empty right now. So that one may or may not continue to be an issue.
Well, and if I may, with the land information consultant as well, we were having Rupert Milky do a lot of the parcel splits, which was roughly about $150 an hour. But I forget if it was Virginia's suggestion or not, but we've signed a contract with Bay Lakes, and they'll be doing our parcel splits, and that'll be at $75 an hour. So we'll hopefully see that cost go down during the year. So.
And then just another items, the others will be here in a couple of weeks doing the annual audit. Most of the stuff we send it to them ahead of time, so they're not even here the full week anymore. And then a heads up that when they do present the audit, there's a new reporting standard that goes into effect this year regarding leases. Once upon a time, you had you paid rent, everything was rent, and you expenses, you paid it. Then leases, or you bought something. If you bought it, you could have financing, you bought it outright. Leases kind of mix those 2. And then so accounting standards would have a capital lease or an operating lease, which would either expense it or treat as financing. And in the last few years, both commercial and governmental accounting now said everything that's leased is now going to be a capital lease. So all 20+ leases we have on every little thing, no matter which side of the table we're sitting on, is going to be treated as a capital lease, or at least we have to go through the calculations. Some of these are very small and won't be material, but you don't know that until you do the calculations. So that goes into effect. We're going to see some slightly different presentations on the financial statements. And next month, I should have everything together to make the request to have Winter Park become a Winter Park enterprise fund. So we're going to move the existing budget. We're going to take the year-to-date activity and move it. And then we've identified a number of assets that either were, and some of these smaller ones were not actually capitalized. And we'll add them to the its own fund. So going forward, it'll operate as an enterprise fund. The funds raised there will help pay for the equipment that'll be needed in future years. That'll come up next month. That's all I have.
At Winter Park, that's what we've been talking about, right? Just to making sure that the money stays there.
And so far this year, and I'm assuming we're darn close to having everything in, there was about $60,000 of profit over the expenses, which that's great for, holy moly. That's great for 1 year. Until you realize how much those snowmakers and that groomer cost. So a few years of those plus your maintenance on other items that will probably need to be done earlier than later. So that's the purpose of it right there, is to keep that money and make the improvements when and as we need to.
Right, we'll move on to medical, dental, and then the overtime.
Certainly. You have the reports in your packet. Currently, for the first quarter, we have medical at 100, so almost 5% above what the premiums are versus claims. This actually is not uncommon in the first quarter, first half. You know, as the new year comes, now everyone will start to do their medical procedures because now they have a deductible or they're waiting to get that done. Same thing with medical. We're about 12% over there. We'll see how that goes. Again, I always like to look from year over year, and if we're anywhere between 500 and 5 over, to me, I think we're doing okay. So I think at least for right now, it is what it is. We have 3 claimants that are at that are not at the 55,000 for stop loss, but they will be getting there before the year end, I would assume. A couple of them were medical procedures. Any questions specifically on the medical or dental? If not, then we'll go to overtime. If the committee wants, I know that for the sheriff's department, we have had a few FMLAs as well as some overtime otherwise. Again, nothing overly out of the ordinary that the sheriff's department hasn't indicated in the public and safety committee meeting. If you wanted to, Sheriff, go ahead.
Yeah, just one thing I want to make you all aware of. Actually, April wasn't impacted that greatly, but as you start to see us going into May and specifically June, you're going to see our overtime spike. But fortunately, there's a revenue source that goes with it. The situation is Algoma. We have stepped in and heavily assisted Algoma PD. They had a retirement of a chief, a resignation of an officer. They're running that entire department right now on 2 people. Because then their other officer had military leave issues that he had to attend to. So they were scraping it. So we were asked and offered to step and assist. We've assisted them with everything from their background checks for onboarding new officers. I did interviews a few different days to help them with the new hire interviews. They have since actually hired a chief. We weren't part of that process. But Virginia, if you want to make that announcement as far as the
Well, right, I know. He did accept, and we're doing background check and everything, so I don't know how much they said publicly yet.
Oh, yeah, I think it was out there. I know when I was
It's out
notified.
there
So,
already?
yeah.
Okay.
So who they've actually brought on board or offered it to, and of course going through the process, is retired Warden Dave Allen has been selected as the police chief up in Oklahoma. So that's exciting. So again, we're going to be wrapping our arms around him and making sure we get him into a great place to kick off. But again, on the overtime, we have been backfilling their shifts heavily, but we have invoiced them, making sure we're fully compensated for all of our overtime benefits. We did the whole formula package. So they're very grateful for us to be there, and we more than welcome that opportunity to assist them.
How long do you anticipate we're gonna have to continue to help?
It's going to be heavy through June, somewhat trickling off in July, but probably through the summer, because by the time we get those new officers through their FTO programs, then we can start to really scale back. So we're looking at doing this probably right through the summer months.
How are we doing with our own deputy staffing in our department? I know it's a cycle. Kewaunee is going through it, the city, and Algoma. It's just a shortage of officers everywhere.
So we're doing, without the ramp up, right, we're barely just keeping our head above water. So we've got Regina just came off training, hopes about midpoint. Michaela just started. Jensen's right behind her, so we've got them stacked pretty good that as soon as we can get them into the conduit, right into the flow, we're good. We just got authorized to post, again, to post for that entry-level jailer dispatcher, because once Jensen gets into that training cycle, we've got to have people on the bench ready to cycle in. That being said, that really doesn't assist us in our ramp up that we had anticipated in 2023. No, we're walking in quicksand because we've already had a retirement, we've had resignations, and we know we've got retirements that's in this year. So we're doing everything we can to really just stay above water. We're going to look at our program probably in 2024, because what we had anticipated in 2023 is now getting right shifted over to 2024 to be able to, do what we need to do, when and if that facility is ready in the, let's say, late summer of 25, we got to make sure we got staffing available. So yeah, it's tricky with the staff environment. But as I've said for many years, what we lack in quantity, we make up from quality. And we've got some amazing men and women that are coming on board with the Kewaunee County Sheriff's Department. We're just, we're walking in quicksand.
A lot of challenges.
So, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sheriff. So what we're looking at is by the end of 25, we want 5. And if we were to say what the number is right now, we need 5 additional to what we have. Right now, we're at 0.
Correct.
What's the date?
All right.
The bidding for the jail, when is that deadline?
Oh, for the, yeah, so everything is
That's
on the
out right
street
now,
currently.
right?
That I believe is coming in the first week of June. That's going to give them some time to review it, vet it, get everything ready to present in front of this group, I believe, on the 28th.
But we'll be sending out, there'll be, yes, the bids came out on the 10th. And they get, I believe, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. The bid opening, in fact, there will be a pre-bid meeting next week. I believe it's on the 16th at the county board meeting. I can send that to county board supervisors.
Did we have a jail study committee meeting before the June 28th? Are they presented, or are they just bringing that in the board, those bids?
We didn't have any schedule.
I think we had talked about it and didn't know when. Okay,
So I can.
just
send
trying to
that.
keep up with all that.
So,
Moving fast.
All right,
When
thanks, sir.
when did you say is the bid opening?
bid opening is at the end of June.
Correct.
So, but there's a pre-bid meeting, the 16th.
Anything else on the overtime report? If not, we'll move on to the treasurer's quarterly report. That was also in the packet. If just for review, are you going to go over this or?
No, Michelle said she couldn't be here today. This has become routine, but
Yeah.
I just want to point out that you see a lot of variation in the rates
Mhm.
from 0.4 all the way up to, I don't know what the highest is. We just had to renew a CD last week, I think it was. And the choices between 1 year and 2 year were very high, 4%, and the one actually was 5 or just above 5%. So they're changing quickly, and as those end, which will be in 23 and 24, that's quickly going to change. Other than that, if you have any questions, if I can't answer them, then Michelle certainly can.
It is interesting how the rates have been going up in the last 6-8 months.
Quickly they've gone up too.
I don't know if that has something to do with the Feds raising rates or I don't know. So,
Well, they're making more money on loans, so they can give you more money on.
and the printing more money, so. Any questions on the quarterly treasurer's report? Looks real good to me. Okay, moving on, we have a request from the contingency fund to fund the highway shop architectural and engineering fees proposed by Barrientos Engineering and Design. I don't know, Todd is here from the highway department, Gary is here from the highway shop. Dan is the chairman of that subcommittee. I think based on the information that was presented, I think it's pretty straightforward. They want to go on with the scaled down version of the initially proposed building. Jeff's also on that committee, so I think it's a worthwhile project to proceed, and I would enter if there's any discussion. There's enough players here, otherwise if everyone's satisfied, I would entertain a motion to approve the transfer from the contingency fund to fund the highway shop study.
I'll make that motion.
Moved by Virginia, second by Jeff, to authorize contingency fund money to fund the highway shop architect and engineering fees. All in favor? Aye, opposed, hearing none, motion carried. Thanks for the information and all the work you guys have done on this.
Just for the public in the respect as to some may be asking, well, why aren't we using highway roads and bridges fund money for this project, since it has to do with highway? And from a philosophical standpoint, we don't ask any other department whether they have their own fund or not to fund their own building. So, and this work and this scope is part of what would be potentially a new building project. So therefore, I believe it is correct that money be taken from the county as a whole, as opposed to road and bridges fund money. So.
We agree. Any other comments on that? Otherwise, we'll move on to the, which I find really interesting, is the general information that's provided on the new state shared revenue legislation. I don't know if this has been passed or
No.
if it's in the works, but it's confusing to me.
It's what this was, this is just, and again, what would happen is the representatives, state representatives, as you see, Voss and Bourne. Voss is the Assembly Speaker. Bourne is the Joint Finance Chair. Kurtz is also one of the lead folks on the Assembly side. Had asked for an analysis by the LFB, the Legislative Fiscal Bureau, as to what the formula would be for what they're putting together as a new shared revenue bill, and how that would affect the various municipalities as well as counties. I did not give you every single page. If you want to, I can send you the link, but this was, I just put together what would be the effect for municipalities within Kewaunee County as well as Kewaunee itself. Under the current shared revenue bill, this is what you would potentially see as increases in shared revenue. Now, I want to do two important caveats. First and foremost is, shortly after this was introduced, the Governor Evers did indicate that he would veto the bill, because he did not believe that the money being provided in shared revenue was enough. Second, both Kurtz and Felskowski, Senator Felskowski is one of the lead people from the Senate side, has said this is still a bill that is a work in progress. So some of this may change as well, but I just wanted to give it to the committee to have them understand that if it were to pass just as is, that Kewaunee County would potentially see another $250,000 in shared revenue, which comes out to roughly about a 38-39% increase. Now, as for, I guess, I'm not counting the chickens before they're hatched. I don't believe that and second of all, we wouldn't be getting this money still this year. It would not be part of the 23 budget. So if something like this were to happen, it would happen in the 24 budget, which then would be part of the 2024 county budget process. But I just wanted to give the general information to the committee, and if there was to be more discussion, that's fine. But I just like to give information to the committee, so that way, as those questions pop up in your head or you're asked about them, you can say, here's what's being discussed, but none of it is guaranteed at this present time.
And if I may add, I think there's a lot of big numbers being thrown around, and for this to actually get agreed upon in Madison, I wouldn't hold my breath at this point. It sounds great.
I do believe, from my conversations with people I know in Madison, there will be an increase in shared revenue. So we will be receiving more money. But if you're gonna ask me what that number is, I can't tell you because they don't know themselves. They have some ideas, but again, there's a lot of this back and forth, as well as when we talked about shared revenue, there's some contingencies in there that some they want a certain amount to go to public safety. And then a lot of what you're hearing from the legislature is they are wanting to dictate a little more strongly where those additional funds would go. Another thing that I'm hearing is what's called an innovation fund. The speaker, this is a big one for Speaker Voss, in that there would be money set aside, a 3-year fund, about $300 million. And what would happen is that would be an incentive fund for governments to try to collaborate and consolidate operations. And therefore, the savings that they would get from there, they would be able to receive additional shared revenue if they were sharing IT services or street service, whatever that is, that if you have governments combining their services to provide better service and tax savings, that they're not penalized for that. So we're not exactly sure how that will all flesh out either.
And the $7 billion surplus amount that's being put down there, I don't know if that money's all actually there either, so.
It's there, the part that, depending on who you're selling it as, is that $7 billion is not recurring year after year. In fact, the majority of it is one-time money that we have that savings for this short period of time, but it will not be happening year after year after year. And so a lot of the Republican side is wanting to be very careful about that, because you don't want to use one-time money for continuing appropriations, because that's how you get in trouble in the first place.
So one guy call that a legislative exchange, a little smoke and mirrors.
Yep.
So wait and see what happens as far as the joint finance, and if it does come to the governor and he vetoes it, that might be an interesting battle to see if they can overturn the veto.
Correct. It will be very interesting. Now, if I was to be a political prognosticator, I would find it hard to believe that the Democratic Party, even the legislators, are going to vote against their own governor and have the only override of governor in decades. So, but stranger things have happened.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
thanks for the info. Okay, moving on. Does anyone have any other questions on this issue? Okay, moving on. The vendor payments were online. Is there any questions on those? And we have the supplemental payroll here. If we need a motion to approve the supplemental payroll as presented. Moved by Jeff, second by Virginia, to approve the supplemental payroll. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, hearing none, motion carried. Any other matters to come before the committee?
I have one question,
Gary.
Mr. Chairman. The jail study committee, I thought it was that, I thought it was my impression that before we presented this to county board, that we were going to see what the results were, so that we all understand. I think we need to answer to the county board, because we're that committee. I guess I personally would like to see some kind of a meeting so that we're on track to,
Finance
I thought-
or jail study committee.
yeah, I don't care who does
I
it.
thought
Well, jail study committee will have to get together.
the issue initially, as I recall, it was that we weren't gonna have a meeting till on the day or after the bids are open.
Yeah.
And we said, okay, do we want to be at the bid opening? And the issue was, no, I don't think you have to be there, but
Yeah.
we should have a meeting of the committee prior to the information going to the board. That's how I recall it.
I agree, because I think it would look kind of stupid if we would be the
First
committee.
time we're seeing it at
Yeah,
the same time as the board?
Holy Christ, now it's $40,000.
Well, jail study committee, once we have the date, we'll get a date set.
Yeah, okay, and I don't care how we do it.
I mean, I can set one tentatively for that matter.
And if we knew what the date, the exact date the bid was.
Well, we know it's gonna be given to us on June 28th.
That's the bid
That's
opening.
full board. That's full board
Oh.
meeting.
So they'll have that information, so maybe. a
I would
week
have
or-
to go, I would have to be looking at June 16th. We should have hopefully that information.
You're talking, we'd have a special finance meeting.
Well, whatever the meeting
Jail
is,
study.
either
Or
the jail
study.
study or finance. I don't care how we
I
do
mean,
it.
if we did finance, we could do that before the board meeting,
Right.
the night
Now,
of.
let's go with, can we tentatively schedule June 16th for a jail study committee?
If you'd like, Mr. Chair, I can tell you the
Because
2
I'm
days.
I'm assuming we'll have information by then that we can
Yes.
review.
So the 2 dates, May 17th from 10 to 11 is the pre-bid meeting, which is just basically Samuel's meeting with the different contractors wanting to do bids. So that way they can answer questions. But then the bid opening is June 8th at 2 PM. And both of those meetings are in the county boardroom.
Okay. So they'll have tentatively the numbers
Correct.
at the 16th.
Yeah, because if you had, you're opening it, give it a week, yes, I think the 16th would be pretty good.
Let's go with 16th because I'll be in the country then.
So do you want to call this a
Jail study,
joint jail study finance committee meeting?
that's fine too. We can do that.
What day of the week is that?
That's a Friday, June 16th at 8 AM.
So you want to do that instead of the 2nd, Mr. Chair? Or you want to
We
be
have
at
our regular finance.
Okay.
committee.
That's fine. Okay.
So that's assuming that works for everybody on the other side. We can move that time back if that helps us, anybody, but otherwise we generally have gone with 8 AM.
Whatever the two chairs wish.
That's fine.
That's the arrival of the first Viking cruise at 8 AM on that day. So,
Do you
You wanna put it to
7 AM?
no, doesn't matter, it doesn't matter.
I mean, do you need to be there?
No, not, I don't.
Yes, she does.
I mean, are you leaving?
Got a hand out,
Are you leaving?
not.
Well, you don't have to be here, I guess, because it will be joint. So, I mean, you should probably be there with leading the parade, you know.
Oh, throwing the anchor out.
Throwing the anchor out. I mean, I don't know what,
Still to get upset, dumped up,
Yeah.
people falling out.
It's all the security
see.
stuff. There's that they have to build a fence because it's a boat that's
International.
foreign boat kind of thing.
oh, yeah.
So they have to all have IDs to get
It's not
off the
just the
little
southern
barge
border
and come
anymore.
through.
Yeah, I mean, if you just want to pour across the board,
Bring it
yeah,
up,
you can't
Lord.
do that in Algoma. I mean, this isn't,
We have to hire up our security, you know, for the whole day.
this is Algoma, not Laredo. All right.
Okay, June 16th then will be the jail study finance at 8 o'clock. Okay.
And I'll send out to the entire board, the 2 meetings, I'll send out today, that May 17th and June 8th.
Okay, then the next issue on the agenda, we have our next meeting set for June 2nd at 8 o'clock here. And the next thing on the agenda is I would entertain a motion to adjourn. But Jeff, second by Virginia, to adjourn, all in favor? Aye, opposed, hearing none, we are adjourned.
At 8:28.
Thank you.
We could just have the meeting